I'm Karina Kells. I'm the conceptual photographer that's showing here today. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things, a lot of different mental health issues, drug addiction, places where you can get help. So what I'm going to first start out with is statistics. So each year there are 2 million people that die of opioid overdoses. 896,000 of cocaine overdoses, heroin 591,000, tranquilizers, benzodiazepines, that type of stuff, so like Xanax and stuff. There's 688,000 deaths. Stimulants 426,000. So altogether, that makes 138.3 million people die each year.
Where?
In America. And that doesn't even include alcohol. Alcohol is 2.5 million people die each year related to alcohol. So, I mean, it could be a car accident, different things like that. And these statistics they can't always be specific. Because sometimes people overdose and it looks like a suicide, but it may not have been. And so there are different things that, it kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but so then suicide is the third leading cause of death in ages 15 to 24, and second leading cause of death for 24 to 35, which is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff isn't talked about like it's an epidemic. It's an epidemic. There's no doubt about it. You think about all these people that die each year from suicide and drug overdoses, and people aren't talking about it. And so it has gotten better and more on the news. Like they had a fellow who was a whistleblower about the opioids on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago, which was very interesting, and the fact that the government did a lot of things and let pharmaceutical companies do a lot of things. There were towns that had 300 people in them, and they were getting loads of opioids brought to them.
How?
Laws, people they let it slide through. Crazy, huh? So how does mental health and addiction work together? A lot of times addicts have mental health issues. That's where a lot of that starts. It starts as self-medicating, and then you're fully addicted. It can exasperate. So if you have depression and you start using opioids or alcohol, it can exasperate the depression and make it completely worse. A lot of times, say an addict goes to a recovery facility, they aren't diagnosed with mental health issues for a while, because a lot of times it can look like a schizophrenia, but it's really not. It's the drugs, coming off the drugs mixed with mental health issues. So a lot of times they don't always diagnose right away. And what also happens is you can have depression in your bloodline, or schizophrenia, really. And doing different drugs can actually initiate those different mental health issues. So you may not have had them, they were in you, but you weren't having the symptoms. I'm not good at speaking in front of people.
I'll throw you words.
Yeah, thank you. But then the drugs can actually initiate that. So you may get sober, and then all of a sudden you have depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a big thing that happens with drugs. Can exasperate that, or even. So it's good to get help and realize that mental health and addiction do not work together. It's a terrible thing. It can make things completely worse, and that's where the suicide rates come in. Because a lot of times it can make it so bad where, you commit suicide, which suicide is 100% preventable. You get help. You get help from your family supports you. It's 100% preventable, but it's like the third leading cause for 15 to 24-year-olds. That's crazy.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The drugs that are prescribed for mental health problems, are they helpful or adding to that addiction problem?
I do talk about that later, but I can answer your question. They are helpful. They, right now, some certain things like benzodiazepines are addictive. So that'd be like Xanax, which is pretty widely known. I bet everybody knows about Xanax. Which is actually, the death rates in that are starting to go up, and the addiction in that are starting to go up too. Can be addictive. But what prescribers usually do is they will give you 10 pills each month. So it's more as a PRN, if that's needed. Or they only give you a certain amount. So, and they watch you. There's certain things that they'll watch to make sure you're not overusing. And a lot of that stuff is watched a lot better than it used to be. I'm sure there are some facilities that don't watch at all, which is real. But there are a lot of facilities that are getting a lot better on that. So they can be addictive, yes. For a lot of times, the addictive ones are more with the anxiety. So, does that answer your question?
It's frightening.
It should be. It's scary.
Why don't they use something else besides pills for anxiety?
They do have other medication that is non-addictive for anxiety. So a lot of times in certain facilities, if they know you're an addict and you have recovered, they are very, very careful on what they prescribe you.
But didn't you say they don't always know you're an addict?
I don't know that I said that.
Oh, maybe I thought that.
Yeah. Well, there are places that probably don't know that you're an addict. Not everybody is truthful. But, say you went to Project Turnabout or Hazelton or whatever, then they're going to know you're an addict, depending on what your drug of choice was as well. If you're honest with your prescriber, then the better your outcome will be.
Corinna, sometimes I think, we always think of, the drugs, they give a lot of the drugs because it's an easier thing for people to use. If you're going to do therapy, you may, for anxiety, for example, you might be talking years of therapy. Whereas if there's a little pill that you can take once every 3 days, it might be an easy way to, do things.
Yep, that is correct. Some people, therapy completely works. Everybody is different. Every different mental health is different for everybody. 5 people can have bipolar. They're all going to have different symptoms. There are the main symptoms, but each symptom is different for everybody. So some people, therapy may work 100%, and that's fine for them. And like for myself, I went to therapy for 7 years, and I was still having I refused to take medication because I thought this is bullshit, excuse my language, but I didn't want to take medication. I felt like, I don't know, kind of in my mind like an outcast, like, I don't know, I don't want to be taking all these meds and then I'm just going to be drugged up, which is untrue. I'm sure there are some prescribers or people who need stronger doses, but once I started taking medication is when things really got better for me. And so there shows, I did therapy for a long time and we worked through a lot of stuff, and I had kind of a breakdown last winter, and I finally decided, okay, enough's enough. I need to recover. I need to work on this. And so I decided to go to different places. I go to group therapy at the Woodland Centers. That's 3 hours every Wednesday. I see a therapist, and I also see my psychologist, who helps prescribe the medication, and they monitor very well. You know, if it's a new medication, you see them once a month, so then it can get into your system and then see if the symptoms have gone down or not, or if there's symptoms that, you know, you react and it's not, you know, a good reaction, because everybody reacts differently and everybody does better on different medication. It's not one fits all. So you are completely correct, yeah. So I was just going to talk a little bit about when mental health issues started for me. I think I was, I don't know, I'd say 14. I was sexually assaulted, and then I kept it quiet, which I will say is not the good thing to do. You need to, as much as you feel ashamed and everything else like that, you need to speak out, even just to your parents or a friend. And then when the friends you talk to, as much as you want to say, oh, I don't want them to not trust me because now I'm going to tell somebody, you need to talk to their parents or somebody that can do something about it. And even, well, that can be a whole nother story, but so that created depression, and different things, and then I started using drugs, which, as I talked about, is not good with mental health issues. So it just kind of continued, and you know, when I was younger, I didn't know what coping skills were. I didn't know what depression was. I didn't know what panic attacks were. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I wish in schools they would teach coping skills. It would be amazing. I didn't learn coping skills or good coping skills until I went to treatment when I was 20. And so, I mean, the drug abuse continued until when I was about 20. I was in a pretty bad car accident, which has left me disabled. And then I went to treatment after that. And that was amazing for me. I didn't stay sober. You know, I've had relapses, and that happens. I've had relapses with my mental health issues as well. I've had quite a few friends pass away too from in the addiction life, or overdoses, or car accidents because, you know, they were using. And I'm trying to think, I don't know if any of you guys know Casey Jo Schulte, about that story. She was one of my best friends, and a lot of her death had to do with overprescribing by doctors. So that had a huge those kind of things had a huge impact on me too. And then my significant other committed suicide, and he always wanted me to do photography, so I decided to take some business classes because I wanted a business background. And then I didn't really like it. So I went to Ridgewater. I found Ridgewater, which I had no idea they had a photography program, but it's amazing, just saying. And I had teachers that I had the first semester, or first year, and then during the summer I knew more about Photoshop, and I started messing around with different things. Like those photos right there, the three of me and the one of me in the water, were some of my first photos where I kind of messed around with how do I do that stuff. And then the second year, my teachers really, really pushed me to open my horizon and different things like that. They actually ended up, because I kind of introduced conceptual photography to them a little bit more, and they actually created a little like assignment thing where they teach different ways to do conceptual photography, and it's an assignment, so I thought that was pretty cool. So then from there, I do regular photography for families and children and stuff like that. But then I decided in my spare time, I was just gonna keep doing this. And cause for me, I'm not a huge person where I go protest or I start this huge organization. This is what I do instead, I guess, to open people's eyes. And also, I mean, I kind of do it for Matt as well, my significant other that committed suicide, because, I mean, you know, if he would have gotten help or agreed to get help, it could have been prevented. So I try to speak out about it. So then I was going to talk about relapses and relapse plans. You know, what in the mental health area they can call relapses. They call that kind of stuff relapses as well, just like with drug addiction. So say you're doing good and then all of a sudden you decide, well, I'm not going to take my medication anymore. I'm not going to see my therapist anymore. And you start going downhill. So there's different things like doing relapse plans, you know, with your family, talking to them about signs and kind of just setting something up, and then also saying, this is what I'll allow you to do. And then you can bring those relapse plans when you're going to help the person and say, okay, you said that, you know, I could call the mobile crisis, so let's do that, you know. And so when you do that plan, it's set in stone. A lot of times it doesn't go the way that you want it to with the relapse plan if you're a family member and different things like that. But it's something to watch for, and you need to figure out what type of signs that you see. So maybe it's you're sleeping more, or you don't want to get out of bed, or you don't feel like cleaning, things like that. So then I was going to talk about what relief doing this artwork provides me. I love it, number one. To me, a lot of these things are mental health issues that I'm working through with my photography. Some of it is different things that I haven't gone through. Like that one is about schizophrenia, the three of me. I know someone with schizophrenia, but it's not something that I've ever gone through. So those can be a little bit harder to try to figure out, you know, what the plan is and how do I portray that. So it provides a lot of relief for me. It actually helps me work through my own trauma. And it makes, even if this show helps one person or one family member and lets them, you know, kind of have an idea of how do I help my daughter or father or different things like that, that provides relief for me. I guess I would like people to gain from my photography different things. You know, someone can relate to one of these pictures, you know, it could just really pull them in and they can be like, you know, I felt this way before, and realize that, you know, you're not alone. You know, and I also would like family members to see possibly what, say, their daughter feels like on the inside. I guess I do this in photography because I feel like it's more, you can look into the person's eyes and kind of see that pain, I guess. Because you can explain to your father or whatever, you know, what you're feeling, but sometimes it doesn't always click when that person has never been through it. They don't click that this is really hard for them, or why aren't they getting out of bed? I can't figure it out. Well, it's because they're feeling this way. And also, I mean, there's a lot of people who think that mental health issues aren't real. You know, smile more and get out of bed more or go outside more. Yeah, those things are a nice thought, but the best thing would be to be supportive and talk to them, slowly try to get them to go get help. Talk to them about different things. And you can look up online, how do I help someone? They have lots of different steps and things to look at. And I have some stuff as well over here that talks about different signs and what to do about that. So I've helped myself with my mental health issues by therapy. I see June Meyerhoff from the Stevens I can't remember exactly what it is, but she's amazing. And they have other therapists there too that are really great through that place. They also have the Woodland Centers around here. There's one in Ortonville, there's one in Monty. I think they had one in Appleton, but I'm not sure if it's still going or not. So they have therapists there. They also have the psychiatrist that will help prescribe medication. So I've been to therapy, and then I also take my medication, and staying on your medication is great. Don't start to feel better and then just quit, because you'll be back where you are. Because there are a lot of times where I've thought, oh, I'm feeling better, I don't want to be on meds for the rest of my life, but this is where I'm at, and I'm okay with that. My moods are way better, I feel so much better, and I also go to group at the Woodland Centers, which is great. I talked about that earlier. They have multiple different groups there, which is really great. So if you know someone who needs that extra help, I'd talk to them about that. What to say to someone that doesn't want therapy or medication? There are a lot of different ways to go about this. I had something. So you can talk to them about, you could ask them, how can I support you? And just, if they're having a hard time getting out of bed, try to think of something that they like to do, or just call them and talk to them. The best thing is support, and support however you can. And not judge, and not say things like, like I talked about earlier, like just smile more, or why can't you get out of bed? Or you're lazy, different things like that. None of those things are true. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Your neurotransmitters are not working correctly. So I would say support is the number one thing. And also researching different signs. Finding out, okay, does this person really have depression or anxiety, different things like that. Because like I said before, suicide can be preventable. You can even bring them to a therapy appointment, or look up different therapists and try to just let them know, like, okay, this person, I've heard good things about this person. Maybe I'll go with you to your appointment, and I'll sit outside with you. And then, you can go in alone, or you could even tell them, if you want, I'll go in with you. And then the medication part is really to talk about, that medication helps. It's not terrible to be on medication. Doesn't make you any different, and not everybody has to be on medication for the rest of their life. Sometimes, you learn enough skills, and then you can slowly go down on your medication or be on a lower dose. And also continue to take the medication, like I talked about before. You don't want to stop, especially without talking to your doctor. There can be terrible withdrawals, and also your symptoms are going to come back. And kind of your question earlier, this is what I was going to talk about. Does just therapy help? We kind of already went over that. What does stigma do? Was one of the things I wanted to talk about, if I can find them. So, the most important thing is develop some personal strategies for responding to stigma. If you have mental health issues, and even just a person on your own, you know, if someone's making fun of someone for being lazy, even though they have depression, speak up. Don't just be like, oh yeah, that person's really lazy. Talk about it and let them know kind of your opinion. You know, you don't have to shove it down their throat, but just let them be aware. Sometimes people who experience psychiatric symptoms do not know the facts themselves. They may blame themselves for their symptoms, or think they cannot take care of themselves, or that they can't be part of the community. You may have had these negative thoughts or feelings. This is called self-stigma, which is very real, and that's why a lot of people don't end up getting therapy or medication. And also because they don't know where to go or where to start. So it is important to fight stigma because it can make you feel discouraged and cause you to lose hope in your recovery. One way to fight stigma is to educate yourself about psychiatric symptoms and mental disorders, and to be able to separate myths from facts. For example, knowing that you did not cause your depression can help you stop blaming yourself. And stigma can really, I mean, if you have a family member and you are using the stigma, they are going to feel that, and they're going to feel like, okay, well, I'm hopeless, or I'm the black sheep because I have this mental health disorder, and may end up not getting help because of the stigma. A lot of people don't get help because of stigma. So the best thing to do is talk about it and figure out, like it said, myths from facts. Should you be scared of people with mental health issues? No. There are certain, like, psychosis that can be a little bit scary, but I mean, it's not like in movies where someone with schizophrenia is killing people. There can be voices in their heads with schizophrenia. And sometimes they tell them what to do, and they can have hallucinations. The best thing to do would be to call a mobile crisis center or to call the ambulance. In certain situations like that, it is necessary to call. But you don't need to be scared of them, like that person's gonna flip out like on the movies. I mean, not to down movies, but a lot of times they over-exaggerate symptoms for people with mental health issues. Should you be scared of addicts? Not necessarily. There are certain people that can be a little bit scary on different drugs, but at the same time, you also need to realize that it's about the drugs and not necessarily the person. So if it's a family member, you don't need to be scared of them unless there's a certain situation, which is the same thing with mental health issues, called mobile crisis center, or call 911, call the ambulance, or bring them into the emergency room. So what programs are around the area? I have different handouts right here that talk about different local programs. The ones that I really know about would be Woodland Centers. They have arms workers, they have psychiatrists and psychologists, they have different group therapy, and then they also have, I can't think of exactly what it's called, but they do activities every week. So if someone has depression, or social anxiety, they isolate a lot, those activities can help you get out of the house. And then there's the Steve Rumler Foundation. They are amazing. They, the Steve Rumler Foundation started when Steve Rumler passed away in 2011. Now, he had a master's degree in business, and he was doing great. Great guy, amazing guy. But he got a back injury, and he got addicted to the opioids. When they stopped prescribing it, he went to heroin. The first time he ever tried heroin, he died, overdosed. So the Steve Rumler Hope Network, they changed their name recently. They also started a program called Fed Up. So last year, and these are naloxone kids. I have quite a few of them, so if you know a family member or a friend or anybody that you can pass these around to, this is for opioid overdose. It helps keep them alive until you can get to the ambulance or anything like that. And if you would like them in private, you can just talk to me afterwards. So they go like this.
This trainer contains no needle or drug.
So you pull the top part off, and then you pull this part off.
You are to inject. Place black end against outer thigh. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Injection
And it can
complete.
save lives. There was,
Do they need to have their skin exposed?
yeah. I just am wearing a dress, so. And these have like they say the same thing like on here. So if you don't know anything about it, it tells you what to do. So if someone is overdosing on opioids, this can save a life. There was a huge thing on it saying that, well, if you save them, they're gonna flip out. It's like an adrenaline thing. It's not. It just keeps their heart beating, because when you overdose on opioids, your heart stops beating. There was this huge thing with cops that they didn't want to do it because of that fact. They were worried that, these addicts were gonna freak out and hurt them. Not true. Just so everyone knows. So the Steve Rumler Foundation handed out, 4,000 naloxone kits were used last year. And this is in Minnesota. And so in Minnesota, the rates went down, and there was only 412 ODs. So, I mean, if you think about it, those 4,000 naloxone kits, if they weren't handed out, there'd be almost 5,000 in Minnesota instead. So, I mean, talk about it. Is there anything else?
Are they expensive? The kits?
You can get them from Steve Rumler Foundation for free. So also there's this Stevens Law that is don't run, call 911. So if you're a user too, don't leave the scene. A lot of times people do that because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. Oh, I've got all these opioids on me and they're not prescribed to me, or I have heroin on me, I'm going to leave. Don't do it. There's Steve's Law where if you call 911, you won't get in trouble. And it's saving a lot of lives from that law. In Montevideo, they also have a Safe Opioid Prescribing Team. They just opened it up. It's a Suboxone clinic. If you call, ask for Kathy Brower. This is a great facility. If you're in trouble, you can get an appointment with them the same day. And they do this because a lot of times with addicts, there's a small window. Say they're like, okay, well, we'll get you next week. Well, by that time, the addict's probably done being like, oh, I want help. They've been using more and they are not ready anymore. So there's also Out of the Darkness in Wilmer. They do a lot of help around the area. There is NAAA. So different things that can help keep you sober and or not relapsing in mental health. So there's AA and NA, and I do have some pamphlets up there from Al-Anon, which is a facility, well, group meetings. And so in those pamphlets, it talks about, you know, how to help a family member that is an alcoholic or an addict. So those are there. Group, like I talked about at the Woodland Center, spirituality, art, different hobbies that you can do, family, meditation, grateful lists, you know, or just even, so like grateful lists would be like, you know, at the end of the night you talk about even the smallest things, like I have a toothbrush. I'm grateful for having a toothbrush. The more you do that, the more you are thankful for the bigger things, or you see bright and bigger things. And also, a different list would be what you're happy that you did today. So like it could even be the smallest thing, like making your bed. And a lot of times, I'm talking to people who have really bad anxiety, don't want to get out of their house, they're isolating, they have depression, they have bipolar. These different things can help kind of just build that self-esteem a little bit. And sometimes when you can just build that self-esteem a little bit and a little bit higher and a little bit higher, then all of a sudden this person is looking for help. And self-esteem is a big thing with addiction and mental health issues. So kind of like I was talking before, how you help people would be, you know, don't down them too. Try to like talk to them about, you know, I'm really proud of you for doing this. Because the more that you can help their self-esteem build, they're going to start to hear those things. Maybe not at first, but the more you can be supportive and grateful, show them that you're grateful or that you're proud of them, the more they're going to hear it. Yeah.
We hear that people have to hit bottom before they're ready for help, but you're talking about self-esteem. Isn't that a total opposite?
You don't want people to hit rock bottom. That is a complete myth. 100% myth. In my eyes. Because there's a lot of, there's a lot of people who say, yeah, rock bottom. And maybe for certain people that's true and good. But when you hit rock bottom, you've lost your whole life. You've lost everything. And then you don't have family members to support you. You don't have anyone. You're homeless. You sold all your stuff for drugs. I mean, that's the reality of things. So to let a family member hit rock bottom is probably one of the worst things you could do, in my eyes. You want to help them, they're in the middle. They're in the middle, or they're just starting. You want to try to help them when it's starting. And look things up on the internet, you know, what are the signs? And I've got different things of signs and stuff like that. And even with mental health issues, you don't want people to hit rock bottom. You just don't. Because by that time, it's so hard to help them. I would rather say help people when they're in the middle or when it's just starting instead of letting them hit rock bottom, is my opinion. Because otherwise they have to build their entire life. And a lot of times when people hit rock bottom, they have no family. They've used their family to no ends. And so then they're not around to help. If you can get it at the beginning, you don't feel as used as a family member. Are you confused by that?
Yeah. Who would be feeling used?
Family members. Because when you have an addict, they're stealing money from you. They're stealing things out of your house. They're telling you that they're going to get sober, and then they don't. They're telling you that they're going to be to this family thing, and then they don't show up. They're telling you, oh, I'm going to pay you back, and then they never do, and then they steal more money from you, and they sell your things after they've sold all their things. So, and it's the reality. When you're an addict, that's the reality. You want that drug, and you will do anything to get it. That's why a lot of times when people are addicted to opioids, and they are done with their doctor, and their doctor does nothing, doesn't say, here, let's taper you down, or let me bring you to a facility, you go to heroin. That's why a lot of times with opioid users, if they're addicted, they go to heroin.
What kind of drugs are opioids? Is meth an opioid?
No, meth is a stimulant.
So,
Opioids would be like Percocets,
Oxycontin.
Oxycontin, yep,
For pain?
morphine, yep, codeine, yep.
heroin?
Oxycontin is molecules away from heroin. Literally molecules. That's why a lot of people go to heroin after they are completely addicted to opioids.
How far is cocaine from sugar?
I don't know about that.
What was that?
I don't know that you'd want to snort sugar.
No, I
Or cocaine.
I read somewhere that sugar is 15 times more addictive than cocaine. So I was just wondering.
Sugar is addictive. Caffeine's addictive, smoking's addictive, shopping's addictive, food's addictive,
Sex?
sex is addictive, yeah. You think of anything that you obsess over or use too much, it can be an addiction. So you're addicted to shopping. Well, all of a sudden you got $10,000 racked up on a credit card. Well, then what happened? I mean, that's an addiction. Is there any other questions?
Shouldn't we all have one of those kits for people we come across? Couldn't more lives be saved?
Yeah.
Legislature.
Yeah, talk to
about
legislature.
that. I'm an EMT in town
Yep.
here, and we don't have any of those in our regs.
Oh, that's another thing I was going to talk about. Call your legislatures. Please. Please, please, please. There's a big one, Casey Joel law, which, or they may have changed it, but it's so, I'm trying to think exactly how it goes. There's like, for every percentage, which is a very small percent, of pharmaceutical companies that put out a medication, so it'd be like a penny per molecule. That money goes to treatment facilities, things like naloxone, training for cops for overdose victims, multiple things. But it keeps getting denied or put in 500-page things from other legislators, which is ridiculous. But pharmaceutical companies have their hands in everything.
To effectively use your whatever that little injectable kit was called, do you have to actually be familiar with that person? Or how do you know the difference between a drug overdose and a diabetic coma?
Yeah, are you safe from being sued?
Yeah.
The Good Samaritan's Law protects you from that. If you're doing something to protect someone else's life or save it, there's a law called the Good Samaritan's Law, and you're protected by that.
But if someone's laying there unconscious or their heart has stopped, how do you know if they need that kit or
It's a coma.
mouth to mouth or something else?
It's just not.
I don't know. I mean, if you know the person, you're probably gonna know the person or slightly know them and know, say they're an opioid user or that person's diabetic. I don't know if
Check
it's
their
a,
pockets.
yeah, check their pockets, I guess,
They got it on them.
or around them. See if they have insulin on them, or I don't know.
Just call 911.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Call 911.
Call 911. But the biggest thing is, you know, in those situations, you don't want to run away. You want to call 911, and if it is an opioid overdose, you want to use the naloxone.
How long do they have
What do you mean?
to be treated with with the kit?
Well,
I think it's,
You can be without oxygen for, like, it's different, like she said, every person is different. You can be without oxygen for up to 10 minutes and still somewhat
Yep.
survive, but with brain damage and different things like that. So it would be different with every person.
yeah. And the thing too is, I mean, if you know that person's an opioid user, use it.
Yeah.
Just try it. I mean, and like you said, each minute is gonna depend, I mean, brain damage and different things like that, and every person is different, but my main thing would be just use it. If you know they've overdosed, it's in your thigh. It'll tell you. When you open it up, it talks to you. It tells you, you put it in the thigh, and then it counts to 5. You hold it down.
But it has to be on their skin.
Yep. I think. I mean,
It's injected.
yeah, I suppose you could probably put it through their pants. I think that would be fine. The needle would go through.
Cause you don't wanna be taking their pants off.
Be arrested for being a sex
There are different kits out there too, some are
Yep.
nasal, some, there's all
Mhm.
different.
And I would assume that would go through your pants, to be honest. I don't know. I would assume it would. Because it's a needle.
So the thigh is the only, oh, no, you said.
For
some are
this
nasal.
one is the thigh, but they have other kits for naloxone.
It almost makes sense if someone is being prescribed an opioid, this should also be part of that package.
Yes.
So that they had it in the car, that the wife had it, the husband had it, whoever had it. It almost should be
Yep.
in partnership with the drug.
Yeah, it should. But we're not there yet. And that's why I say, call your legislators, protest about it, talk about it, look up different articles, share it on Facebook, make sure people are aware of the statistics and what you do. And I totally agree with you, but we're not there yet. Which is too bad. But there are police stations, which Steve Rumler is a part of, getting them naloxone trained, and what to do. So they help facilitate those trainings.
Is Ortonville trained?
Yes,
Right.
our police officers
Yeah.
all have naloxone in their vehicles. When I say the ambulance doesn't have those, I mean they don't have the quick ones. We have it where we can pull it into a vial. That usually means then a paramedic has to administer that. So locally, yes, most law enforcement officers around here.
Yep, Montevideo does too, I know for sure. I don't know about other towns. There are political views on it, so there are some police stations that refuse it. Kinda like I said before, there's that weird myth about how these people are gonna somehow just like wake up and freak out. I mean, you're on opioids, it's not really. And then it's really just keep your heart. It's not an adrenaline shot. And then there's also Suboxone clinics and different things like that to help you come off of opioids. Is there any other questions? Thank you. You probably shut that off now. I don't know how you do it. How do you?